perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Let's call the meeting of the Rules and Regs together. I guess it's just us. Where's Jeff? We don't know. Did he call in?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything regarding the two board members, so unfortunately don't have a quorum. We can still conduct the meeting. You know, we can still have a meeting and go over the changes, but you can't
vote on anything?
Can't do any official actions, and maybe one of them will show up
in a few
as
minutes.
we go along.
Okay.
But I think we proceed on, follow the agenda, just
Okay.
recognizing it's not an official meeting because we don't have a quorum.
Okay, we don't have a quorum, therefore we cannot vote on the minutes either.
Nope. No.
So why don't we just go over one more time, because these are kind of significant changes, things that are going to affect us for a while. So let's go ahead, Tom. Could we talk about the charitable giving?
So the Charitable Giving Committee, policy 1.03.4, that's already gone through the first entire month worth of voting. So if you have any questions, if your viewers at home have any questions, I encourage you to go back to previous Rules and Regulations Committee meetings, and you can see the more in-depth discussion. But what we're trying to do on this one is just refine it. It's been in place. This policy had really not had a major overhaul since its creation in 2017, and so we're just trying to implement some lessons learned.
I just got a text from Jackie. She said she'd be a few minutes late, so
okay.
Maybe we can just do some things in reverse.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, the charitable giving, Jerry, how do you feel about the changes?
I like them, to be honest. I don't see an issue. Now, we've already read this once, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so for the viewers at home, it hits the Rules and Regulations Committee meeting in month 1, which was last month. Mm-hmm. Then it goes through the work session, and then it goes through the regular meeting for a vote, and then it goes through the entire process all over again. So it's actually a total of 6 meetings until the final vote is taken. Right. And so we're now on the second Rules and Regulations meeting.
Okay. Do we want to go ahead then and skip to the next one?
I would say so.
Okay.
Yeah,
we can go to the next one. These were at the last regular committee meeting. There was a discussion about the 1-year time frame. And so I'm going to pull up 2.09. So these are requirements. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do 2.11 because it actually makes a little bit more sense because we're talking about 2.09 talks about appointed, and this is 2.11 is elected board members. And so we have it highlighted for you, the 2 areas that were most heavily discussed at the last regular meeting. The first being is we originally had it written where the candidate must be a member for at least 1 year, and there was discussion as to, well, what is that 1 year measured against? And that was actually turned out to be a really good question, because when you look at the 2 policies and the bylaws, Doug and I had to make some changes because we realized it was a little bit too simplistic when it started. So this one, we changed it to the transfer date of ownership as recorded on their deed must be at least 1 year prior to the date the board candidate application packet is due. And then we reference this exact policy, and we go in section 6 of this policy, and you'll see that in this paragraph, the above documents must be completed and returned to the corporate secretary by 4 o'clock on the Friday the 15th or the Monday after the 15th if the 15th falls on a weekend. So as opposed to having all that additional verbiage up here, we just said reference, here you go, this is what you want to look at. And so that makes it a lot clearer as to the date that the 1 year would be measured against. And so let's compare that. We'll send this down, and then we'll pull up 2.09. This is the appointed policy, board members that are appointed. And you see this one's a little bit different. The transfer date of ownership as recorded on their deed must be at least 1 year prior to the date the vacancy occurred. And so that creates a set date. So now when the vacancy occurred, and typically that's when a board member resigns for whatever reason, and that's the date it would occur. We did toy with the language of when the opening was announced by the board, but we thought that that would potentially lead to where maybe the board doesn't announce. You know, maybe they'd have some flexibility in that. You know, that didn't seem like. I'm not saying that the board would, but I'm just saying that's a more pliable date where when the opening becomes available, boom, okay, the date the board member resigned, that's it. That's the date. Makes it a little bit easier, more hard and fast.
Okay, but we don't have to fill that vacancy right away anyway.
Nope. Still in this provision, in this policy, we still have in here, if the board elects to not fill the opening. So the board still has the option, and we've seen that take place where an opening came up and we were months away from a new board being seated. I think the opening took place in like January, February. I'm going back a couple years. So the board elected to not fill that position, where most recently the position became, like with the most recent one, it became available in May, June or something like that. So there's a whole year to go, so that makes sense. So you still have that flexibility. The board still has that flexibility to act or to not act.
Okay.
And then let me jump in, and I'm going to send this down, and I'm going to show you what we did for the bylaws. And so the bylaws, you'll notice that it references both meets all requirements for a candidate to run for the board or to serve on the board. So serving on the board would also be being appointed. And so we had to incorporate both of those. The transfer date of ownership as recorded on their deed, that stays the same constantly, must be 1 year prior to the date the candidate application is due, and there's the reference for the candidate running for the board, or from the date the vacancy occurred for the appointment of interim directors. So on that one, we had to combine them where the policies were actually separate. This was an item, this issue was an item of discussion by the board, and so we've set it up in such a way where if the board just decides we don't like this, we just strike it. That simple.
Okay, Jerry was talking earlier about maybe a compromise on that.
Yeah, what I was looking at on it, through a discussion with one of our members, when we put this up there the first time, I voted for it because it made sense. Because a lot of times the people come in and they're lost, and they expect the things to go a certain way, however they got their information or whatnot, that don't always go that way. It's set up differently than they expected. And I'm not sure that 1 year, being here a member for 1 year, is really necessary. That could be worded, Smith, where it's recommended or something, or whatever. Y'all got a better idea of the language than I would on that. But I never thought of it that way as I talked with the member when we voted on it, because we were thinking we were helping. And
Yeah.
so while we can still do a little wordsmithing on it.
So what we did on this one, on the second provision that was discussed, is We didn't make it a requirement, we just put it as a recommendation. And the recommendation has to do with the encouraging the candidate to serve on a committee first, because we do see that when you serve on a committee first, it helps with the learning curve, because there is a steep learning curve when you serve on the board. So what we did on this provision of this portion of the bylaws, while not required, so it clearly says it's not required, while not required, members evaluating whether to serve on the board of directors are encouraged to consider serving on one of the 3 joint advisory committees prior to applying to serve on the board of directors. And then we explain, prior service on a joint advisory committee will provide the member with practical experience and a working knowledge of the administration of the association. So if anybody asks, well, why are you encouraging that? Well, we've told them, there it is.
Yeah.
We could do, I'm fine really either way. My opinion is, we could soften this one where we say members are encouraged to be property owners for a year. Although I do think that Director Fosdick was like, these are fairly similar, maybe we're being redundant. Maybe we strike the 1-year rule altogether, because we're kind of approaching, if you serve on a joint advisory committee, inherently you're going to serve for at least a year. Mm-hmm. So maybe we're accomplishing it already.
I think we probably are, because the way I look at it, we have a lot of smart people here. Mm-hmm. And they can see what candidates, by looking at the profile, listening to them, how they would really respond. Last time we did that, we didn't see that until we actually had the roundtable where the candidates are asked specific questions about mm-hmm. POA, and they really struggled to answer of not having the experience from one of the committees that would help them prepare for it a lot. So yeah, I'd say I'd kind of like to switch. My opinion is to strike it.
Could you move that bottom part up higher in the food chain?
Yeah, that would work too.
Yeah, we could move that as, I think this one, candidate must be a member in good standing. That's inherently, it's got to be the first one. But yeah, we could. Where'd my cursor go? There we go. We could move this and make it B.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Jackie, oh no, that's totally. We're just to get you up to speed. So we're talking about the 1-year rule, and then we were just talking about the encouraging the member to serve on the Joint Advisory Committee. And so I don't want to speak for any of the board members. It sounds like it may make sense to strike the first one completely, the 1-year rule.
I was fine with taking away the 1 year, but I thought we had more that wanted it last time. But I'm fine with it.
Well, and that's what, and
yeah, okay, sorry.
because we've had a little bit of a conversation about it. By encouraging them to serve on the Joint Advisory Committee, one would assume they would have served at least a year.
Yeah.
So we're kind of accomplishing it.
If they chose to serve.
If they chose to serve.
Somebody could come in and want to run for the board and not be on a change.
So I'm personally fine with that. You know, your most recent one was, let's move this up, the recommendation up as
to
number,
the top,
or as letter B.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, I think it'd be good to have a recommendation from this committee as to that we can bring forth to the board. Should we just strike the 1 year, or should we leave it as it's presented? Should we modify it as a recommendation? You're encouraged to live here for a year. We could soften it, or we could strike it altogether.
And the last thing we talked about is, let's strike it and move this up to B, because it takes care of the issue. That's what I'm thinking, and that's what we were kind of talking about.
So you're up to speed.
You accomplish your goal either way by doing recommended or just moving that up and doing away with it.
Yeah,
The only thing about the recommended was that it seemed a little fuzzy. We'd have to get clarity from Doug as to when the 1 year started.
he actually
Okay,
did
so
that.
let's back up real quick. I'm gonna pull up, and that actually turned out to be a really good point. Once we started looking at it, we were like, yeah, there's gotta be more clarity, as to when so on this one, yeah, we did at least 1 year prior to the date the board candidate application packet is due. And then we reference, this is the exact same policy, section 6, which says, gives an actual date, February 15th, or the Monday after the 15th, if the 15th falls on a weekend. So we actually reference the policy. So that's how it would work for election. If we're talking about,
We would take that out as well, correct?
well, you
Yes,
asked,
yes.
your question was, how would we
Right,
measure the
but
1 year?
If we struck the 1 year.
But if you struck the 1 year, then it's no longer relevant. If you kept the 1 year, then we're saying from when the board packet is due, or for an appointment when the vacancy occurred,
Okay.
if you keep the 1 year requirement. If you strike it, we just strike it in all 3 locations.
Yeah, but I think to solve the problem, strike it and move it up to B. Move the,
I think that's reasonable. I think it
says the same thing, really.
I agree.
I think it addresses the varying opinions and concerns of the board. So if that's the way you want to go, I think that we'd want a vote.
A vote. Could
Doug's
we-
going to say something.
Yeah, can you just scroll up and show that language again, while not required language? It says, while not required, members are encouraged to be. So the actual language then would, so
It
we
wouldn't change.
wouldn't change any of
We
that
wouldn't
language.
change any at all.
Same.
We're just going to take
Substitute
the
it.
the 1 year provision in the 3 different areas,
Mhm.
meaning 2.09, 2.11 in the bylaws, and we just strike it completely.
That works.
We can vote on that in a second, but I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You brought this possibility to us because it worked somewhere else really well. Do you remember why they put that in place? Was it a specific thing that happened with that group, or a recommendation for anything like that?
It was nothing different than what we've already discussed.
Okay.
It's a complicated job. I think we're probably more complicated than most communities, but it's a complicated job, and having them be a member for a year gives them the opportunity to get their feet underneath them, get a better understanding of how the community works and so forth.
Okay. Okay, well then, could I have a motion from all of us to perhaps eliminate B, which talks about the 1 year, and substitute I in the position for B, if that makes any sense,
As
Yeah.
it is written.
as it is written.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we substitute the qualified candidates requirements to B, that says candidates must be a member for at least 1 year. The transfer date of membership, so forth, which fills out, just eliminate that and move I up to it where it starts with while not required.
You got all that? Okay. Second? Second? All in favor, all 3 of us, right? So this simply means we push this forward to the board.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we'll present that later on to the board, but I think it's good compromise.
Okay. Do we need to do anything on the charitable giving, because it is the second reading, or we're just
You don't
saying
need to do anything on that.
at all? Because it's already gone to the board once.
Correct. I would encourage you to take a vote to approve the meeting minutes.
Of course, I'm gonna do that in a minute.
Perfect.
I'm just working backwards.
Working backwards.
Working
No,
backwards.
the charitable giving committee is really good to go.
Okay, Do you have any questions on that, Jackie? No. Okay. All right, now that we have a quorum, could we get a motion to approve the minutes from the September 12th meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 12th. Rules and Regs
I'll
meeting.
second it.
Okay, and all in favor? All of us, okay. Thank you. I don't think we have anything else to talk about right now, right? We have open forum, but nobody's turned in anything.
Yeah, and with regards to the next meeting, we normally do not have meetings in November due to budget. The question is
I'm saying December as well,
Yeah, I was just
personally.
thinking
No,
that.
just
I'm
wait
good
till
with that.
January for the next meeting,
I'm good
unless
with it.
we have an emergency or something.
So these 2.09, 2.11 bylaws are all going up for a first reading.
Mm-hmm.
So that would mean there wouldn't be a rules and regs, a second
Right.
consideration for those, but it would be, the work session and the regular meeting would take those up. which is
Yes,
fine.
please.
Yeah.
Okay,
because we do want to, we vote this month and we vote next month on policy 2.11, then it will be in, all these changes will be in place because we typically make the candidate board packet available December 1.
December, yeah.
So we want to make sure we can't be in the middle of the election and change a policy. That would be
so
bad.
all of that timing's gonna work? Okay, all right. Anything else, everybody?
No.
All right, unless there's no open forum questions, so if everybody's okay with this, would you like to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
All right, see you later.